Today, people know these figures as the Anunnaki. But before we get into the role they played in human civilization, let's orient ourselves geographically. Northern Egypt and Giza, traveling due east about 500 miles, we come to the heartland of ancient Sumeria. It was in a flat, marshy area where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers come together. It's absolutely pivotal to the history that we're looking at here. The Sumerian scribes addressed this in their cuneiform texts, noting the first task the Anunnaki had were to dredge the marshland. The question is, how? Getting down to the real, practical, historical reality, how would the Marsh tribes do this? It would have been at least 6,000 years ago. People around the world were living primitively. They weren't trying to tackle and tame major river deltas. Why were they doing it in the first place? To create farmland. At the same time, some Sumerian was supposedly coming up with all this, he came up with the idea of canals. This was all brand new. There was no civilization. There was no agriculture. The Sumerians supposedly made it out of whole cloth. The Sumerians themselves never said they came up with all these inventions. They gave all the credit to the Anunnaki. Let's go deeper into agriculture. Domesticated plants are very different than wild ones. It took genetic manipulation to create them. Wild wheat seeds are very small. The domesticated variety is much bigger. Now we're supposed to believe as they were doing all that, they also came up with farm tools. That helpful little invention, the wheel, and for farmers, the plow, and the 60-base sexagesimal system that we use for timekeeping, the 360-degree circle. Yes, they came up with the 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. The concept of a city, the first form of the written word. Cuneiform tablets were brilliant inventions. Wait a minute here. Let's examine the last 5,000 years after the Sumerians. How many key inventions have there been? Not that many, really. Electricity was certainly one. Key, I mean having nothing and coming up with something. That's the hardest intellectual work there is. We're supposed to believe that one culture on the planet had more intellectual power than all the rest before or since. They came up with the 12-month calendar. They were aware of the planets in the solar system. But this is all according to modern historians, not to the Sumerians. Is it credible, logical, and backed up by the evidence? There are many flies in the ointment, but let's start with one big one. You have a temple that looks like this that goes back 5,000 years, but no smaller or rougher versions prior to that time. It doesn't make any sense. You don't start with complexity and sophistication. You start with something basic, simple. It's the same situation in Egypt where the Great Pyramid is the pinnacle of all the pyramids, and it was one of the first. We would expect to see generations of much smaller pyramids to evolve the concept and the skill. That's what happened in the rest of history. Same thing in Sumeria. We ought to find generations of these kinds of buildings evolving from simple to complex. In all other eras, a strict accounting is kept of the developmental sequences, but not in Egypt and Sumer. They arrived full-blown, full-grown. They were living like this and counting with their fingers, and then the next moment they're living like this and have complex mathematical formulas. It violates common sense and logic. They magically knew how to genetically alter plants, figured out the formula to create bronze. We're just supposed to accept and not question that. Here's a bronze production flow chart. How does the Bronze Age pop up as the first? Hold on, we're getting in deep again. This bronze is the product of copper and tin. You have to know about both of those first. The peculiar thing about Sumeria is they lacked metal mines. Sumeria didn't even have metals. Lots of water though. I think you get the point by now. The Sumerian history we've been given does not add up, does not fit the facts. We can move a 350-ton megalith We can also trace every step of the process of technological evolution that led up to the technology we use to do it, starting with the Sumerian wheel. Sure, we've made artificial metals in the last few hundred years, with the luxury of having 5,000 years of civilization to draw from.